Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, we will see about memory management. So, the previous video for module 3, we started with deadlocks and we saw about what is deadlock, what are the different methods for handling deadlocks. And I also told you that in deadlock avoidance, Banker's algorithm is a very important topic. So, the next part of module 3 is about memory management, and these are all the topics which we will have to learn in this topic of memory management. Okay, so in this video, we will see about the background of memory management. So before going into the actual background of memory management, recall the basic functional units which we learned in module 1. So these are the basic functional units of any computer system. You can find this embedded in your motherboard circuit. Like you will have the CPU. We all know that motherboard is a thin plate wherein you have the CPU embedded on it. You have the RAM embedded on it. It contains the slots or the connectors for various video and audio devices, slots for various external hard drives, and then that is the connectors for various external hard drives, as well as basically the motherboard circuit is connected to directly or indirectly to every other component of your computer system. So here you can see that you have the CPU and then you have the main memory. So one important thing which you have to remember is for the CPU to execute the instructions and the data, all those instructions and the data has to be in the main memory. But main memory is a volatile memory. As soon as you switch off the computer, the contents in the main memory is going to get lost. Also, main memory doesn't have that much space to store all the programs, instructions and the data required for execution. So generally, if you are working on some file and when you click the save button, that file is going to be saved on your hard drive or on your external storage device. And when the CPU wants to execute that program, that instructions and the data or the program is going to be brought into the main memory for execution. Okay, so the central processing unit is capable of accessing only the program instructions and the data which is executing in the program instructions and the data which is present in the main memory. Okay, CPU is capable of accessing the data only from three locations. Either the data has to be present in the registers or the data has to be present in the cache memory which is near to the CPU, or it has to be present in the main memory. CPU is not capable of directly accessing the data from the secondary storage devices or from the disk. Okay, that is about the basics. The next is about what the we are learning about memory management in operating systems. So what the operating system has to do with memory management. So main thing is the operating system is going to do multi-programming. And we all know that multi-programming is nothing but it's a programming concept wherein multiple programs are going to be kept in the main memory at the same point of time. Why we are keeping multiple, why the OS is keeping multiple programs in the main memory is to increase the CPU utilization. CPU should never be kept idle. It should always be the CPU should always be utilized. So when one program in the memory goes for doing input output, some other program can be executing with the CPU. That's why we keep multiple programs in the main memory. So only if you do this type of CPU utilization, you will be you can increase the computer's response to the users. It will increase the speed up of the computer. So that's why we do multi-programming. And so when the OS implements multi-programming concept, it implicitly means that the computer memory is going to be shared among many programs. Many programs are going to share the computer memory. This means the OS has implicitly a responsibility to it has to ensure that one program does not access the address space of the other process, or programs should not be able to access the address space of the operating system. So this is one main memory management function done by the operating system. This protection has to be given to the OS, as well as one process should be protected from another process. Similarly, another important task in memory management is allocation and deallocation of memory to the processes. That is also another memory management function performed by the operating system. So before going into the basics, so this is the this ceramic square chip which is which is visible on the screen is your central processing unit, and we all know that it is embedded in the motherboard circuit, and motherboard is a thin plate which encompasses all your CPU or your RAM as well as your connectors to all the video audio devices and the external storage devices. And you can see that this chip is about the size of a thumbnail, and we all know that CPU is the brain of the computer, and whatever instructions and data we are giving to the computer, that is actually executed by the CPU. And this slide shows you the RAM and hard drive. We all know that the size of the RAM is measured in gigabytes or megabytes or terabytes, and the amount of the capacity of the RAM measures the functionality of the computer system. So that's why, in order to make the computer system perform fast, people add external RAM to the computer system, so that in order to increase the performance or the speed of the computer system or the performance of the computer system. The second diagram shows you the external hard drive. So this is where your documents which you work on, whenever you click on the save button on the file, the hard drive is the place where your documents are going to be stored. Okay. Next, moving on to the background of memory management. What is this main memory? So by main memory, we are actually meaning the RAM, or which is also called as the primary memory. Okay. But your programs and data are initially stored on the secondary storage devices. So the secondary storage devices are also called as the secondary memory. Okay. RAM is the primary memory and secondary storage devices are the secondary memory. Now, what is this main memory? Main memory is basically a large array of words or bytes, and so when I say that it's a large array, it means that there is every slot in the main memory, and every slot in the main memory is going to be identified by an address. The programs have to be brought from the secondary storage device into the memory, and as I told you before, CPU can access the instructions and data only if they are in main memory. CPU will not be able to access anything directly from the secondary memory. And for the main memory sees only a stream of addresses or the read request coming from the CPU or the write request coming from the CPU. Main memory does not know the details of how these addresses are generated. These addresses can be generated by using any type of addressing mode like indirect or indexed or direct, etc. So, but that information is not known to the main memory. So next there are subtopics in this topic. So first one is about the basic hardware which is used for memory management. So before going into basic hardware, we have to know the speed differences. We know that the CPU can access any data present inside the CPU registers. So CPU registers are faster in speed, but the CPU can access the content in the registers in one CPU cycles or sometimes less than one CPU cycle. But there is only limited content which can be stored in a register. And as far as the main memory is concerned, it's going to take many CPU clock cycles for the CPU to access the contents of the main memory. Why? Because every time the main memory has to be accessed, it has to be accessed with the help of the transaction on the memory bus. Okay. So this transaction is going to take a lot of time, and during this period, CPU encounters something called as a stall. Stall is nothing but, since the whenever the CPU tries to get the information data stored in the memory, the CPU has to wait. So that wastage of time is called as a stall, because CPU is not able to do any useful instruction execution at that time. And so in order to compensate for the speed differences, we also have the cache memory. The cache memory is usually located very near to the CPU, and I hope you would have known that there are different levels of cache, like level 1 cache, level 2 cache, level 3 cache, etc. And the basic purpose of this cache memory is it is used to store the frequently accessed instructions and data. So if the CPU comes to know that some instruction or data is going to be used frequently, in order to avoid accessing the main memory every time it needs the data and then wasting the time, what the CPU will do is such frequently accessed instructions and data will be kept in the cache memory which is near to it. So it will be able to access the cache memory in a faster time compared to the time taken for the CPU to access the contents of the main memory. Okay, now we know that memory is going to contain many programs. More than one program is going to be there in the main memory. And so the operating system has to provide protection for itself, which is also going to reside in the main memory. And at the same time, operating system has to provide protection to the user processes. One user process should not be able to access the address space of another user process. Now, this is actually provided with the help of hardware. Okay, the OS enforces this protection with the help of hardware. So for this, the OS makes use of two registers called as the base register and the limit register. Now this base register contains the smallest legal physical memory address of the process. That means you can imagine it like the starting address of the process. Okay, for every process, its starting address is stored in the base register, and the size of the range of addresses for the process, the size is stored in the limit register. Okay, let's say if the base register is 3000 and if the limit register is 1200 for a process, then it means the process starting address is 3000 and its ending address will be 3000 plus 1200, that is 4200. That will be the legal address space of the process. Process can store its instructions and data only starting from 3000 till 4200. It can store its instructions and data. That is the meaning of the value of the base register and the limit register. So here you can see that the base register value for the second process is 300040 and the limit register is 120900. So the starting address for the second process will be 30040 and the ending address will be 3040 plus 120900, that is you get 420940. So the ending address will be 420940. This process, second process, can store its instructions and data only in these range of addresses, and it cannot occupy the addresses which has been allocated to some other processes. Okay, see how the hardware protection is being provided. So whenever the CPU generates an address, it means it is the CPU is generating an address and it is requesting the operating system to fetch the instructions and data from the memory. So what happens is operating system will check for every address which is generated by the CPU. It will check whether it will check first. It will compare the address with the contents of the base register. The address which the CPU is trying to access should be either equal to the content of the base register or it should be greater, right? That address can be the starting address which is stored in the base register, or it can be anything which is greater than the starting address, right? So it checks. If it is true, then it calculates the value of base plus limit and checks whether the address requested by the CPU is less than this value of base plus limit. Okay. So let's say the address which is given by the CPU is some 4000, and if the value which is stored in base register is 3000, and if the value of limit register is 1200, then the value of base plus limit is 3000 plus 1200, that is 4200, and the CPU is trying to access the address 4000. So yes, this process can access anything starting from 3000 till 4200. So 4000 is less than 4200. So that CPU will be allowed to access that address, the contents of that address in the computer's memory. If it is no, that means the CPU is trying to access an address which it is not supposed to, which is not supposed to be the address of that process. So in that case, a trap will be set to the operating system and addressing error will be generated. Okay, that is about the basic hardware protection provided by the operating system. The next one is about address binding. So say in your program, you may be using some symbolic addresses. So for that, you have to know the multi-step processing of a user program. So whenever you have any source program that is fed to the compiler or the assembler, and they will produce the object module for the program. So suppose if your program is composed of several modules, all those several modules may have to be combined together. The object modules of all those independent modules may have to be combined together. So that combining together is done by the linkage editor, and then the resultant object module is being fed to the loader. Loader will try to link that resultant object module with the library files which is required by the program. Okay, with the binary image of the library files, and then loader may load the program into memory for execution. Sometimes this linking of the program object module with the library files might be actually done during execution time. So that is also possible, and that is called dynamic linking. Okay, so this shows the processing of a user program in general. So your program may actually contain, so let's say even though your first user process starts at address 0, supposed to start at address 0, always it is not actually done so, because sometimes it is not convenient to load the user process at the starting address 0. Okay, so in some other cases, the program due to because of the operating system's convenience purpose, it may load the program at a different address. Okay, so that address might have been occupied by some part of the operating system, etc. So in that case, the starting address of the user process is going to change. So we have two types of addresses. Okay, absolute address. Absolute address is nothing but the actual address where the program is going to be loaded in the computer's memory. But when the programmer writes the program, he doesn't know the actual address where it's going to be loaded. So let's say I may write a statement like int count, where count is denotes a variable. We all know that variable actually denotes a memory location, right? So here count is the symbolic address. Okay, and then when this int count statement is being compiled by the compiler, it will generate a relocatable address for this count. Let's say it relocatable address might look something like this: 14 bytes from the beginning of this module. So what will be the address of this variable count? Compiler may generate something like 14 bytes from the beginning of this module. And then the linker or the loader will bind this relocatable address to the actual addresses. That actual addresses are called absolute addresses. Okay, suppose if the starting address of the program is 74,000, then the address for this count variable might be 74,014, because the compiler has produced a relocatable address like 14 bytes from the beginning of this module. So 14 will be added to 74,000, and the resultant address of the variable count might be 74,014. Okay, this is called address bounding. The address which we are using in the program is called symbolic address, and the address which is generated by the compiler during compile time for that variable is called relocatable address, and the actual address where the variable is being binded during execution time is called absolute address. Okay, I can see this example also. Suppose if you have a jump statement like this, so we say that in this statement, we say that it has to jump to a label location called as label. Okay, and the location of label is 6 bytes away from this instruction. So for this, the compiler, when compiling, if the starting address is going to change, then the compiler will not know the address of label also. So it cannot insert it during compilation when it produces the object module for the program. So it may just generate a relocatable address for label like, which says 6 bytes from the beginning of this instruction. 6 bytes from the beginning of this instruction. So then actual address of label will be determined once the starting address of this program code is determined. Okay. So that is called relocatable address. Relocatable address means an address which will be changed, which will get changed or relocated in future. Here the value of the variable label may get relocated or changed in future. That's why it's called relocatable address. Now I told you that addresses are going to be relocatable addresses. If you don't know where the program is actually going to be loaded in memory, then the address is going to change. So when are we going to actually bind the instructions and data to their actual memory addresses? That is this topic. The binding of the instructions and data to their actual memory addresses can be done in three stages. Okay, either that binding can be done at compile time, or it can be done at load time, or it can be done at execution time. So suppose if the programmer knows the starting address, exact addresses where the program is going to be loaded, then the actual addresses might be used in the program. Then in that case, absolute code will be generated. So that is called compile time address binding. Okay, but the problem in this is, in case if the starting address changes, then the OS has to recompile the entire code. because every place where every part of the code is dependent is written in the actual address. So if the starting address changes, all those other addresses also have to be recalculated. The second one is load time binding. So here we defer the binding of the instructions and the data till load time. Okay, till the loader loads the program object module into memory. This binding of the instructions and data to their actual addresses is being delayed. So here what will happen is if the compiler is going to use relocatable addresses only, so it will reload the user code. No need to recompile the entire code. Only those relocatable addresses only will be changed. That is called load time binding. The third one is execution time binding. Suppose if the program itself may be moved from one part of the memory to another, then in those cases, if the programmer knows in advance or if the compiler knows about it, then the binding of the actual programs and instructions to their actual addresses will be delayed until execution time. Until execution time, the program instructions and the data binding will not happen. Okay, one example, real life example of this is, for example, if you book a rail ticket, we will get to know at the time of booking itself what is a coach if the ticket is confirmed, we will get to know what is a coach allocated for us and what is our seat number. Okay, that is called as compile time binding. Okay, where absolute code, that means we know the exact coach where we are going to go, and we know the exact seat number